You're watching Rain Knight Gaming.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Rain Knight Gaming. I'm Rain Knight, and it's time for another Meta Watch. But not just any Meta Watch, the last Meta Watch until Purple comes out. And yeah, I'm super excited for the Purple stuff to come out. And if you guys have some ideas of what you're going to build with the Purple, let me know in the comments down below, or go over to the Discord. People are talking about it over there. It's a lot of good fun. Speaking of the Discord, we've got 2 subscribers that gave us their deck lists for winning tournaments, and we're going to check them out real fast. Then we're going to get into the winning deck from the Cardfest. Very cool, seeing 1 Year War win it all. And then we've got 2 Japanese decks to kind of see what they're doing across the other pond kind of deal. Don't know how you're supposed to say that. First up, we've got Coach SK, and this is his Wing Burst deck, which it's a really interesting idea for a little bit different way of building and playing the Wing deck. You do have the blockers, the wing stuff. In newer versions of this deck, you have seen people go away from the ramp, but he leans really heavily into the ramp, mostly because he wants the burst mechanic of first contact. Looking at the bottom part of this list, it is all burst. And he told me basically what he's doing is, protecting himself with the blockers and then kind of letting his shields defend him. So, they're popping a shield, but they're getting hit by a Witch and the Bride or an incident, or they're getting a blocker, or he's getting another base. Just, burst, burst, burst. And actually, if you guys are interested in this deck, later on in the week, I do a really in-depth, slow-paced, talk about everything deck testing. It's like a 10-minute testing, but much slower and versus a real person. We actually open up our hands to each other so we can discuss everything, so you get to see his insights on how to play this deck. It's a really good time. It's a longer video, but I think you'll like it. Into our next viewer, we've got Ryan E.T. I'm not going to do an ET impersonation because it's embarrassingly bad. And this is a really different looking deck than I've seen a lot of times. It's kind of a rushy aggro deck, I'm guessing, because, it does play a lot of the breach mechanic kind of deal. So, you've got your early game. I plays the Gen. Kind of cool. You don't really see that, but it's basically a gem. Rick Dom for his early game breaching, a little bit of ramp, then some more breaching, and then he gets into his later game stuff. I've never really seen Dual Gundam played much, but he plays some Zaf stuff, so I guess that can come up now. So really interesting seeing cards you just haven't really seen before. Then we've got Institute, Mine, and then the Breach base. Low amount of bases, but 3 different ones. Just doesn't play that many of them. Then pilots, he actually plays a lot of pilots. 3, 3, 4, 3, and that's one thing about this deck. He doesn't play a lot of 4-ofs. He plays a lot of 3-ofs. So it's an interesting, different way of building. A lot of times you'll see people just go 4, 4, 4, 4. So doing the 3, gives him, more different things going on. Really cool, interesting build. It's definitely something I might have to give a try later on. It's a fun, cool, new looking deck. Love it. Thank you, subscribers, for going into the Discord and letting me know if you guys are dominating your locals, because I love hearing from you guys and seeing the cool stuff you're building. Go over there. If you guys want to be in later videos, go over there. Tell me you're winning tournaments. Let me see your builds, and maybe you could be in the next Meta Watch. Jumping into tournament winners out and about in the world, we've got the first place deck from the Bandai Cardfest, and it's 1 Year War Rush. Love this deck. This build is super awesome. It just did a great job. I watched the match, and you just see how well this deck works, and he's really just gotten the build down perfect, I think. He's got your early game, not playing any of the 1/1s, just because, ping is so prevalent. Anything with 1 health is just not going to do it for you. So he plays a lot of the early 2/2s, 3-2, 1-2 kind of deal. And then he plays a lot of ping, which is an interesting, different way to do it, but it's a great way of controlling the board without having to actually waste your attacks on the board. So he's got gun tank, and of course he's got the 3/3 pinger. Just all these different ways to help clear the board without, wasting all your time. Then of course he's got the Char package. Only one Char's Galgoog, just doesn't want to waste a ton of resources on that card. Pretty cool, but it can give you that getting your pilots back out of the graveyard. Very cool, but I can see only playing one. And then he also plays Rikdom. That's another one, just like the ping damage. This is one he can put out there and hit into the board and get his breach, but not actually slowing down. Because on these decks, you really have to be done with the game by like turn 5 and 6. Once you get past there, once you get around 6 and up, your deck really starts to fall off. So you really have to earn in these games early. He also plays the base that gives you the Tall Goose and the 1/1s. The 4/2 early game is really nice. And then those 2/1s later on can just help you flood the board and finish off your opponent. The rest is pretty normal. You've got your pilots and then a searcher. So really basic stuff there. But an interesting build, a couple things I hadn't really seen a lot of. This thing was a lot of fun to watch, and it's probably a lot of fun to play. Getting into the Japanese meta, we had the Tokyo area qualifiers, and you can really see the difference in the meta. They've got one ping up here, one Wing Zero deck. The rest are just blockers and aggro. So really cool to see that. We're going to look at two different blocker packages. We've got the white-red and the white-blue. So you can kind of see the difference between basically the same deck, because a lot of this is all white, and then you've got a little bit of red sprinkled in for a little flavor. I do like having the red in there because you can get that 6 health base, which a blocker deck just wants to slow things down, and those 6 health base really do that. The base that lets you hit for an extra point of damage can be really helpful. More blockers, a little bit control, a little bit searching, but pretty normal stuff we're used to seeing in the white area, except for the Justice Gundam. That's one that I just started seeing recently, and it's really cool because early on in the game's life, people thought Justice was going to be really good, but it never really came to fruition. And you've recently started to see people understand how to play this deck, putting it into things, and it's really interesting to start seeing. Then getting into the blue-white version, or should I just say white with a little bit of blue. This one plays so many white cards. It just sprinkles in the blue just for, the Grandpa, the Amuro, and the Searcher. Has all the Searchers in here. And then just normal pilots and everything. You got your one command down here. And you actually play the Rebuild, which is pretty cool. That's a little bit different. You got this one little early game card right here. But pretty much, it's basically the same thing with just a little bit of added flavor with the blue package. Pretty cool. It's always interesting to see what's going on over in Japan. But that's going to be all the decks for today. We got to see a bunch of really cool stuff that's won a bunch of tournaments and a bunch of tournament winning decks from my subscribers. Awesome stuff, everybody. Hopefully you guys like these videos. Hopefully you go down below, like, subscribe, go over to the Discord, tell me what decks you're playing. I always love hearing from you guys. But you know what I always say, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. And I'll see you in the next one. See ya.